I'm ultimately a perfectly healthy weight, according to doctors and BMI calculators and even the comment section itself, but recently it seems I've been just obsessing over every single ounce I gain or lose because of the content I've been spamming out. And in reality, this isn't really a new thing, it's just the first time I'm sharing it publicly, because I have started to see some progress after well over a decade of trying. The earliest I remember my doctor showing concerns over my weight was like 11 or 12. I was always in the less than 1 percentile of skinniest kids per my age, and I do remember as a kid getting tested to see if something's wrong, and ultimately the diagnosis was I just wouldn't eat. And so the treatment for this ailment was basically the doctor going down and be like, all right, buddy, I need you to eat. And then I would just be like, no. And the doctor's just like, damn, he's good. I was just not a hungry child. And it didn't help that even when I was hungry, there were still things that would put me off by food, and I wouldn't know why. If my food touched on the plate, I wouldn't eat it. If my fork touched something that wasn't supposed to be touched, if it touched a different dish, if my rice fork touched my chicken fork, I would need 2 separate forks. If they mixed or whatever, I can't eat it anymore. And this was on top of me just not really having an appetite in the first place. So these two issues kind of worked together to ensure that I got as few calories inside myself as possible. And I would say that my parents handled it well. I wouldn't really change anything that they did. Every single night we got home cooked meals. We always had well-packed lunches, but we weren't allowed soda, for example. I know a lot of kids now just kind of chug soda or energy drinks even. We would always have milk, water. We'd have like juices and stuff, which yes, that's high in sugar, but I mean, I feel like that's a pretty normal part of a breakfast. So undeniably, I had a very good diet available to me. And even recently, there's been a lot of comments saying like I should add butter or olive oil to my foods to increase the caloric intake from them. And my mom's actually been doing this since I was a kid. I never thought anything of it, but she was pouring in olive oils and adding butters. Not only would it actually apparently make me eat a little bit more, she said, but it was more calories. And also, I think per doctor's recommendation, I began to drink a meal replacement shake as a kid. It was Ensure. I drank it for years. I mean, I've been taking meal replacements basically my entire life at this point, and as you can see, I went kind of aggressive in a recent video in trying to replace all my food with them out of curiosity. And today, still, I add olive oil to stuff. When I do cook at home, I go through a stick of butter about every 2 days. But then, like I mentioned in my recent video, there was always ice cream coming through for me. It was fundamental enough in my upbringing that it deserved segments in 2 videos at least, because I liked ice cream as a kid. It was one of the things that I ate totally willingly, and I know that most kids growing up, they probably only got dessert if they finished dinner. Otherwise, no dessert for you. You gotta go to sleep with no ice cream. But I would have genuinely just gone on a hunger strike and actually starved myself. Luckily, my parents went from offering ice cream to me as an occasional treat to a nightly thing, to essentially whenever I wanted. And not only was I single-handedly keeping the ice cream industry alive, but I think it was kind of keeping me alive. And in spite of this very narrow, unhealthy on the surface diet, I was a healthy, happy, and super active kid. And if you've seen some of my recent videos, you know I've been looking for alternatives to eating, which just isn't that realistic. But there are a lot of alternatives to vaping and smoking, with flavored air devices quickly becoming the go-to of them all. Fume is the leader in this category, and they're sponsoring this video. So before I move on to my teenage experiences, let's pop in orange vanilla. Fume has nothing burning, no nicotine, and no batteries. It's non-toxic and produces no vapor, so basically you can enjoy the flavor anywhere, guilt-free. The first thing I noticed before even putting it in my mouth is just how satisfying it is to hold, and it turns out Fume is designed to be fidgeted with. I suspect a flavored air device would have made stopping way easier than it was, and Fume has been giving me the enjoyable aspects of those past habits with none of the just like, oh god, this is so dumb, why am I even doing this? They have way more flavors than I anticipated, but so far the just simple freshness of the crisp mint has been my favorite. And you can join over 300,000 Fume customers, and for a limited time, get the new magnetic stand for your Fume for free if you use code GoHerping when you order a Journey Pack. So go to tryfume.com, that's spelled F-U-M, and add on code GoHerping to get a free Fume base when you go and order a Journey Pack. So go grab your Fume. But then I got to teenagehood, where I became more aware of how I looked and a little bit more self-conscious, because what teenager doesn't? It's kind of, I mean, you skipped teenagehood if you didn't get that part of it. But it also came with more control over what I eat, because at this point I can use the kitchen myself. I can cook stuff, I can prep meals, I get my driver's license, and I can go to the store and get food myself. But at this point, even though I kind of wanted to gain weight, I truly felt that it was going to be impossible because I was so disgusted by eating and had such a long track record of making absolutely no progress. So, what was teenage me's logical next step of thinking? Veganism. Except then I realized how disgusting dairy alternatives are, so we took a step back to vegetarianism. And people today still love to remind me, like, remember that time when you were a vegetarian? And I'm like, please. Okay, yes, I remember when I was vegetarian. You don't need, you can stop reminding me, okay? I'm not a vegetarian anymore. It's past. And honestly, I wasn't a strict vegetarian. I was probably like 90%. Still, if I was like craving Taco Bell, I'd get it every so often. So I'd say, yeah, 90% vegetarian for well over a year. And it was a terrible idea. I was really into animal welfare, which in itself isn't dumb, but I was ultimately using my vegetarianism, I think, as an excuse for why it was suddenly okay for me to not eat. Like, oh, well, there's nothing here that's that vegetarian. I'm on this diet, I can't eat today. Oh, no, I'll go eat my tofu later. It's good. Because I was just looking for outs of ways to convince people and myself that I don't need to or shouldn't eat at this time, because I just wanted a reason not to. There was a real positive to this. Unfortunately, it wasn't related to my health physically, but I guess kind of mentally, because I was super anxious, super socially anxious, and my anxiety was horrible when I had to eat around people because it was such a miserable experience for me, but then I had to act normal around others. So it did kind of come in clutch in those situations, like, oh, everyone's gonna go have lunch somewhere. If I want to go, I can go, but people were no longer like, why are you not eating? You didn't touch your meal. I could just be like, oh, well, I'm vegetarian. And it worked, and it actually did reduce my anxiety. So I ate meals at home, like as a family at dinner, until I was 19, which is when I moved out. And up until I was 19, my mom happily obliged making like veggie alternatives. Like not every night, but we'd have like 1 or 2 veggie nights a night where it's centered around something I liked, and that was really cool. My dad and sister would complain about the copious amounts of tofu, but I was chilling. But there is that fine line where there's that time where you have to accept who you are versus being able to change yourself, like anything from age, height, sex, whatever. Like you can only control so much in your life, and I've gotten to meet a lot of interesting, like, weird people, both online and in person, because people still are just super convinced and super dedicated to changing parts of their life that, in my opinion, they shouldn't even bother trying to. From one guy that was adamant to save up and get like leg extension surgery so that he's taller. Another dude was so determined to change his race that he was actively bleaching his skin. He was trying to change his scent. He was trying to do, like, yes, you can change your hair, you can practice different accents and change the way you talk, but he was genuinely trying to alter his melanin and his pheromones. And these stand out to me because they're such extreme and rare examples. And I will admit, I think that I clumped myself as a skinny fella who wanted to be less skinny into this group. It's part of me. It's something that I just can't change. I mean, speaking of height, I was always short. I still am. In middle school, I was always mistaken as an elementary schooler who must have wandered over to the wrong building. And so I kind of just thought that was funny at the time. I really only saw it as a feature. Not only was it just kind of a little personality quirk to stand out, like I made my height part of my personality as a kid, but also it made me more desirable in certain ways. I loved a lot of activities in gym class, and kids loved having me on their team. Like in dodgeball, I was a literally small target to hit, but I could still hit other kids just fine. And capture the flag, I loved capture the flag because everyone praised me for it, because I was so tiny and light and agile that not only was it hard to catch me, but I was quick enough to zip up to other people. Like I could stand behind another bigger kid and that kid's coming after you, but then there's Alex right behind him, and then I like shoot off like a little torpedo connected to his submarine host. I'm just like, Nyom, and then I get you. I don't know. I liked to capture the flag. It was fun. So basically, I could not change my height. And not only did I accept that, but I actually appreciated it and didn't want to change my height. And honestly, that still stands true today. I actually don't envy taller people. I know like every short guy is like, oh, to be 6 feet. I'm like, Why? And so when it came to weight, I was telling myself the same thing, like, oh, well, I like being this skinny. It's a feature. It's so great. I love when people remind me every 30 seconds how skinny and bony I look. I love my life. And that was, in comparison to height, that I actually appreciated. This was just me trying to pretend and get by being okay with it. As I hit puberty and then even more into adulthood, I would kind of like look in mirrors a bit less or cover myself up more with long sleeve clothing whenever I could. And I would refuse to tell people how much I weighed. People asked all the time, like literally every day. At school, people were asking, and then out in the real world, they're like, oh, how much do you weigh? You look so small. Like, oh, thanks. And I didn't really know how to say I don't want to tell you without making it very clear that I was self-conscious over it. And sometimes I would just concede, tell them my weight, and then I have to sit there while they have that shocked, oh my god reaction, and I'm like, this is so awkward, I hate this. And in the words of my sister, who's had the same experience her whole life, she's like, since when was it okay to go up to an obese person and be like, oh my god, you're so fat, how fat are you? I did actually get into a stupid and unhealthy habit of actually checking my BMI anytime my weight fluctuated by a pound, be it up or down. Oh, what's my BMI at now? And it was always incredibly low. And even the majority of my adulthood, from 18 into my early 20s, I was still stuck in the 90s on the scale, and seeing that 2 digits just sucked. And it also sucked that it bothered me, because I was like, I hate that I'm actually bothered by this. It shouldn't really matter. I am pretty healthy. But I still couldn't deny the truth that it sucked to look down and see it. It was even worse because I was confident in myself that I would be stuck at that number literally until I die. But at 19, once I moved out of my parents' house, I ditched the whole vegetarian thing. All the food was on my own. I gotta prep my own food. I gotta cook it. I gotta buy it. I gotta eat it. It's all up to me. And trust me, this is related. I got into virtual reality at this time. Please ignore my chicken who just laid an egg. I was playing on an Oculus Rift CV1, and it was my first experience with it. And it let me transform myself and my body physically into whatever I wanted. You can make a model, you can find or download a model, you become the model, you can look in the digital mirror and see yourself as the model. And this is a very odd way of snapping out of it, but it just made me realize, like, okay, I don't want to be skinny. This would be kind of cool. This is a better way to visualize what I could be. And so my mom still today feels bad about how much sugar she let me eat, but I don't mind. I think she made the right choice, because now, once I started putting in the effort, I realized how hard it is, because now I'm this guy's guardian. And I can't get him to eat anything. And on one of the recent videos, I had never heard of anyone else mentioning this before, but it was cool to see some similar experiences, because some people were like, yeah, I don't get hungry, and so it's not until that I'm physically shaking and I'm like, what's going on? And you're like, oh, I haven't eaten. And that's exactly what I've experienced. I'll be like, I'll wake up and I'll be like actually being like this, and I'm like, what's going on? Do I need to go to a doctor? And then I'm like, wait, it's Thursday, isn't it? I haven't eaten since Tuesday. Maybe that's why. There was another comment that said I simply shouldn't eat and that my body will take over. After all, people in third world countries, you don't see them with like eating disorders or whatever. And I think that's an interesting like argument. I do like to think about that kind of thing, but I feel like ultimately I could be wrong. It's just because those people die. I mean, one time I was so weak after waking up, I think this was 2019 or 2020, I couldn't actually walk, so I had to physically crawl downstairs to the kitchen and to get nutrients in me, because it had been so long. It just totally left my mind, and that period of sleeping left enough time to use up even more energy that I wake up and I'm like on the ground essentially. So luckily I had enough strength to get to the kitchen. First thing I do, crack open a crisp Dr. Pepper. I will never experience a Dr. Pepper just that perfect in my life again. It pretty much saved my life, I don't know. Anyway, tangent aside, it was time to take my inspiration from this 3D model and make it a reality, but not a virtual reality. But for 2019 and 2020, when I was ages 19 and 20, I was the guy, I was like an overweight person. He was like, yeah, I'm gonna hit the gym, I'm gonna eat a little less, I'll do it, I'm getting to it, I'm gonna start gaining weight soon. I didn't really put any effort in. The effort I was putting in was telling myself I'm gonna put effort in. Didn't do anything about it though. It wasn't until 2021 that I began to make a real effort. Step 1 was just try to eat more. It didn't work. Step 2 was to explore if something was physically wrong. I went to the doctor after being gaslit by my YouTube audience into thinking that I had low testosterone. this, which is funny because this has made a resurgence on the channel, but for years people were like, low testosterone, soy boy, beta, male, I don't know. And I was like, maybe I do have low testosterone. I guess I should get it checked. So I went to my doctor and he was like, why do you want to check your testosterone? And I was like, these people say I have low T. And he was like, so how big's your penis? And I was like, I wasn't caught off guard by the question because it's an unusual question. I was caught off guard because it's a question that I've been asked every single day for like years, and I didn't expect my doctor of all people to be the one to ask me this day. He essentially asked me a bunch of questions to kind of like interview me on whether I'd have low testosterone or not, and it was really weird because I felt like I was just talking to a YouTube viewer in some ways. Not only because he wanted to know how big my dick was, but because he knew about my YouTube channel and he knew about like the business I was running. And so he was like sitting there just like gassing me up, like, look at all this stuff you're getting done. Look at you, like, you've told me about your like work schedule, your sleep schedule. You've told me about the stuff you do. I watched your, like, he's seen some of my stuff. And he said, I guarantee with 100% certainty that you don't have low testosterone based on your lifestyle. And I was like, that's okay, well that's kind of epic, I guess. But he was fine testing me anyway, because he's like, whatever, it's your money, you can do the blood work if you want. So I tested my thyroid and testosterone and everything. It was all fine. My testosterone was not like incredibly high, but it was on the higher end of normal. And it was such a funny appointment. But ultimately I came away from that disappointed, because I was kind of hoping for a solution that I didn't have to do. I could just like, uh-oh, I have low T, I stabbed T into me, now I'm all better and I don't have to deal with my problems myself. Unfortunately, this is more proof that I was gonna have to do it myself. Man, that sucks. That's such low T energy. However, I didn't leave empty-handed, and that's because he gave me drugs. I forgot the name of the drugs, I'll put them on screen. It was an allergy medication or something, but apparently one of the side effects of it is an increased appetite, and he was like, here, just take these, you're fine, but this will make you eat more. And I was like, okay. So I start popping pills to eat more. If it had worked, I guess that would have been cool, a pill to just fix my eating problems from all these years. Unfortunately, all it did was make me incredibly thirsty. It was so, like, nothing satiated my thirst. I just wanted so much water in my body. Oh my god, I was in the bathroom the whole time. It was, water was coming out of me as fast as I was going in, and I couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't do anything, because I was so incredibly hydrated that my bladder was always on the verge of exploding. So I stopped taking these, because I didn't need to be more thirsty, I was already hydrated. And so step 3 was eat more, but not like step 1, eat more. Step 3 is literally a product called Eat More. If you're gonna click away from the video for some reason and you're gonna go, don't buy Eat More. Eat More, this is not a sponsorship, this is in fact an anti-sponsorship for Eat More. I saw it on Amazon, it had pretty decent reviews, I decided I would try them. They claimed to make you eat more, and all it did was make my urine burn really bad. It felt like pee-pee became fire hose, but not hose that puts out fire, hose that sprays fire. Eat More made my pee-pee burn a lot. I don't know why. Why is there so much? This is a video on weight gain, and I keep talking about I messaged the company and I was like, yo, pee-pee hurt. And they refunded me immediately. Okay, so we tried prescription drugs. We tried non-prescription supplements, but what about non-prescription drugs? Tons of people over the years have told me to just smoke some weed, man. It'll solve all your problems. You'll get munchies, you'll get an appetite, you'll be cooking. On the scale of like pothead to should be in prison for possession, I definitely don't like drugs, and I really would rather not even include this on the channel, but it's such a common question that I know people are going to keep asking, so I will just say I was a teenager once. It didn't make me hungry, it just made me really horny. I have a script for this. I'm having trouble following. Therapy is another thing I don't really want to talk about because I don't like therapy, and I feel like that's very dangerous to say on the internet, so I'm not saying you should or should not do anything therapy related. I'm just gonna stay on the fence with that. A lot of people seem to enjoy collecting mental health diagnoses like they're Pokemon or something. I try to avoid them. I would worry that I would use them as a crutch. I'm trying to give like a responsible answer on this. I don't know. But what I can ultimately confirm is that everything I've experienced in regards to eating and gaining weight and everything, it's ultimately mental. It's not physical, it's not an ailment, it's not testosterone or thyroid or digestion issues. It's not parasites. I don't have worms. And yes, therapists have tried to help me with it. They've talked me through things. And of course, they've diagnosed me with things because I guess that's part of their job. I mean, I was in therapy for something else, and then I came out with an eating disorder, which was not actually, I was a little bit annoyed because I wasn't there for that. But she was like, oh yeah, by the way, you're gay. But food. And in the past, separately, I learned that I have OCD. I developed it probably when I was 7-ish, but I didn't know I had it till I was like 21. Not only do I not experience the appetite and stuff and have physical aversions to it, but also I have irrational fears of contamination, which I've gotten better with, but I kind of mentioned that before, like separating foods. If foods touch, they're contaminated, they can't be consumed. If I do try to force it, it just comes back out. So it's less of like put food in mouth, chew, swallow, because it's not going to stay there. It's like I feel like some people in my position would have just taken this as confirmation that they should give up, and I was certainly not going to use these as excuses. If anything, they were just motivation. And so this is when I really got down to business a couple years ago, when I was like, I don't care, I'm going to solve this one way or another. I will die trying, basically. I didn't memorize this full script, so I am just going to read off my phone so I don't miss details. But I started experimenting with foods themselves. So bland foods, for example. What if I just add no seasoning, no salt, no pepper, nothing, get it down easier? What about extreme spice? Also hot or cold foods, different temperatures. For example, as a kid, I was more inclined to eat cold stuff, and also even just physical temperature of my environment. I have trouble eating when it's hot, I eat more when it's cold, but not freezing, so just lots of little things. There's an interesting comment that I actually never thought someone else would say, but they were like, what if you stimulate your diet with sugar? And I had actually been experimenting with that, where you would think logically, drinking a Dr. Pepper before your meal, that's gonna fill your stomach, there's air in it. However, I've realized that the sugars were actually helping to stimulate me to eat more. So I switched Dr. Pepper out with other sugary drinks like sports drinks like Powerade that have less bubbles but as much sugar. I then ended up just ultimately trying straight sugar, spoonful of granulated sugar. So I started timing myself and documenting basically when I hit certain parts of a meal. So on average, I experience fullness 7 minutes after my first bite. So once food starts going in, I have 6 minutes, 59 seconds to get as much as I can in until I begin to feel full. It's at the 11-minute mark that I start to feel extremely uncomfortable and feel like I'm going to puke if I eat any more. And after 18 minutes, it's physically impossible. For me to get anything else in me. What sucks about this is I love sit-down restaurant experiences, and luckily there's often enough distractions that I don't get in my own head. I can enjoy the experience to where I can eat full meals. Generally speaking, it does also sometimes make sit-down experiences harder because they give you your drink, and then 10 minutes later you get your appetizer, and then 10 minutes later you get your entree. I still do eat out. I actually just went and ate out a couple days ago just for breakfast. So these don't always apply. Like if for some reason you've eaten with me, whether we met up or you know me personally, you might be like, oh, well, he ate when we were together. It wasn't easy. I do feel more motivation to eat when I'm around other people now. It's less anxiety inducing and more motivational to make the interaction go smooth and stuff, so yeah. One common therapy tactic recommended by therapists was to schedule times that I eat and always prepare food at those times a day. Unfortunately, it seems to be the holy grail of eating recommendations by professionals. They just kept telling me like lunch, breakfast, dinner. That's not the right order. But I will literally not eat a single bite. So a lot of you know how much I've spent on DoorDash over the years, and that's because I could lunch, breakfast, dinner. Why can't I say them in the right order? Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Food arrives. I can literally schedule food via DoorDash. You can schedule it any time of day. So I could schedule and it just shows up. But even then, oftentimes I would be just throwing away $15 to $20 in food after not even taking a single bite, because that tactic personally just did not work for me. I was, however, looking to people that I considered experts, mukbangers. How do they eat so much food? Some things I picked up was they always take bites before they're done swallowing their last bite. Like they bite, chew, bite, swallow, chew, bite. So like it's like a conveyor belt. They're never doing one thing at a time. But when I eat food, I take the food, I bite the food, I chew this food, I swallow the food, I take the food, I bite the food, I chew the food, I swallow the food. Too long of a process. Also, they chew very fast and very aggressively. It's like they're trying to kill something in their mouth. Also, they do this like audible. They're super audible while they eat. They always like, they're like moaning. I mean, I guess a lot of them are literally like maybe turned on by the food. I guess I couldn't relate. This is such a terrible video. But they're like, oh yeah, this is so good. And so I was like, does this work? No, it doesn't work. You can't, I thought it's maybe like feeding a baby, because you go like, yummy food, and you give food to the baby, and the baby's like, oh, that means food good, food yummy. Doesn't work on myself. Maybe if someone else does it. It also has helped to eat alone, and I also just tense my stomach naturally a lot, so I remind myself often to stop tensing. Also, to help with that 7-minute timer, a lot of American foods are, you gotta cut it. Like, I like Asian food a lot, so and a common theme with Asian food, you use chopsticks because it's all pre-cut. The chef does it for you. But American food, you have to cut it yourself. So I have started to cut all the food in advance as if it's an Asian dish. And then I could literally eat it with chopsticks if I wanted, but for example, when I just had breakfast a couple days ago, I cut up my waffle and it looked silly, and like the waiter came over and she was like, is it good? And I was like, yeah, probably, but I'm still preparing it because I'm cutting it into squares, and then once I start eating, it all goes down more quickly. I also did start aggressively counting calories. I just use MyFitnessPal. People ask what app I use. I don't know. I'm sure there's multiple apps, but I like MyFitnessPal. I've taken too many cheat days. I did get into the habit of, if I had a really good day where I ate a ton, I would be like, you know what? I think I can take a bit of a cheat day the next day, and then I proceed to consume 0 calories, which totally defeated the purpose. Granted, I do still sometimes use this to my, like, advantage in a way where if I know I'm gonna go eat with people, I will not eat much the day before so that I just do have more of an appetite the next day. So I can kind of work around it sometimes. I've also cut caffeine and alcohol almost entirely, and caffeine, oh, there's a baby bunny. Oh, he's so small. If someone wants to go to Starbucks, I go to Starbucks, and I like Starbucks. But I don't drink caffeine every day. Alcohol is filling. It is caloric, but also just generally unhealthy and won't help any muscle recovery. Caffeine is an appetite suppressant, though. So if I drink anything from an energy drink to a Starbucks Frappuccino, my appetite's suppressed. I also cannot eat in the morning, which I've mentioned before. This is common with a lot of people that don't eat much. I don't know why. It's just in the morning, we do not break our fasts. We continue to fast, and I eat more at night. So instead of doing that 3 meals a day throughout the day, I just have a better time if I ramp myself up. In the morning, I have a tiny amount. In the middle of the day, I have more. At night, I have a lot. Right before bed, I have a huge amount. And it's like a building, I don't know, it builds, and then it drops in the morning. Also, I thought it might be a good idea, spoiler, it was not, to limit how much water I consume because, well, hey, water fills my stomach and that's 0 calorie. No, it's good to stay hydrated. I guess it's more vital than eating, in fact, to have water inside of you. But also, it does actually, if I drink a lot of water, it makes me comfortable with my stomach being full. However, I have been limiting drinks with a lot of air, so sodas. As much as I love soda, I have kind of replaced them recently. Like, my all-time favorite drink has been Dr. Pepper for a long time. Recently, I've switched that with my all-time favorite sports drink, which is Powerade Mountain Berry Blast. Still very sugary, still full of syrups. It has a lot of sodium, but it's not all airy like Dr. Pepper. And also, it is more hydrating, and I can exercise and work drinking Powerade, but Dr. Pepper kind of hurts my tummy because it's all like bubbly and bouncing around, so yeah. Also, sticking to the same food every day kind of does work for me. I mentioned this also in the soy shake video. If I just keep eating the same thing, I do get disgusted by it eventually, but if I find that thing I like, I just keep eating it. It's a pattern, actually, when I was a kid, my mom would be like, what do you want for dinner this week? And I would say, I just want X every night. I want tacos every night. And she'd be like, well, how about we do like 1 per day? And then maybe we can have that every Monday. But I'm like, no, can we have it 5 days in a row? And she'd be like, no, that's weird. But as an adult, I just do that. I'll have the same thing. I think my streak is, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 days in a row of just the same food. Sometimes that was McDonald's. I ate McDonald's twice a day for 3.5 weeks, and it was the only thing I consumed. Maybe that wasn't the best one, but I mentioned in a recent video I had jalapeno poppers every day for about 2 weeks. Recently I had chili every day for about a month, so it works for me, honestly. It allows me to not only condition myself with that food and not have to think about it, but also refine the food itself. So if I'm making it at home, I made damn good jalapeno. I can make a killer jalapeno popper now. However, a huge one, just massive, that has contributed is reducing my stress. The concept of stress eating is possibly the most foreign thing to me imaginable, because look, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way here, but logically thinking, you generally shouldn't eat when you're stressed, because generally if you go into fight or flight, your stomach wants to be, your body wants your stomach to be empty in order to best fight or flight in that situation. It's gonna be hard if you're all full trying to digest food. It's just so wild to me that it's like so many people stress eat. Because when I get stressed, I can't eat anything. And so, thankfully, through tons of effort, through like actual years of effort, I have been able to majorly reduce my stress. Like on a stress scale, if we're going 1 to 10, my stress was probably at a 10 for at least a few months, if not a year. It was hovering probably at an 8 for years. But today, I would say my stress is like a 2, like it's super low. And it took a long time to get down to this, but it's made it way easier with the less stress. And people have been able to notice through my demeanor in videos, how I look, how I act, how I talk to them both in person and online. And so, in 2023, for the first time in my mortal life, I hit a normal BMI. After all of this effort, I finally saw it hit, boop, out of red into green, or whatever color it is. It was so wild. Now, this is arbitrary. I don't think BMI is arbitrary. Like, having a BMI of 10 is objectively worse than a BMI of 18, but having a BMI of 17 isn't really that much worse than having a BMI of 18. It's close enough. It doesn't really matter. So yes, this is arbitrary. It's just based on this human-created scale, but it was enough to make me feel really good about myself. And also, a question is, was my health ever at risk at any point, like during all of my years of being skinny? I would say the risk was just malnutrition potentially, but luckily I was starting to take vitamins. So I would say the actual skinniness itself wasn't a harm, as far as I know, to my health, but I'm not completely sure. Again, this is more physical and for just my own like preference of what I want it to look like. And then there was that other arbitrary number of bouncing between 2 and 3 digits. It really sucked when I was 100 pounds. And in a recent video, I said I was deadlifting 155 pounds, and people thought I said 855 pounds, but 800. I was between 800, why do I say it like that, and 99 pounds, which seeing it go from 3 to 2 to 3 to 2 digits was just awful. Now, again, this isn't that different from bouncing between 109 and 110 pounds, but it was the fact that the digits were changing. It was another arbitrary, just mental factor that was bothering me a lot. And so it was after I finally passed that 100-pound mark, seemingly for good, and then eventually hit 110, it's where I really became obsessed with gaining, because I was like, I can actually do it. I was lying to myself. It was not impossible. I was able to put on nearly 20 pounds over years, which is a long time, but the fact that I could actually do that, to me, that was a lot. Once I hit 110 pounds, I was like, okay, if I stay consistent somewhat at least, if I keep trying, I don't think I will ever drop below 100 pounds again. And that was a pretty cool feeling to know that I think 2 digits is forever in my past. Initially, my plan was to film myself exercising and trying to gain weight, but not actually post it for a year plus in the future. And that was just because I was too self-conscious to post it in the moment. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to experiment a little bit. So on the Discord server, discord.gg/GoHerping, I started throwing out little tidbits of like my weight and some pictures and some progress videos. And I liked the response that I got on the small Discord server. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go ahead. And also some people flat out said I should just go ahead and start posting these publicly. And so I did. And so I don't want to be fat. I also don't want to be bulky or buff. I want to look strong and be strong. I still want to be super agile. Ultimately, I would say the order of goals is ability to do my favorite hobbies, and then health, and then aesthetics, probably. though health and aesthetics admittedly can kind of switch sometimes. For example, is it healthy for me to drink a bunch of soy shakes? After all, now I am perfectly healthy weight-wise and I don't need to gain for any health reason. In fact, they have specifically told me, you know, you're a good weight now, you don't need to gain anymore. Even the guy that asked how big my dick is. I did kind of clickbait the 1 year of lifting but no gains. It was actually 9 months and I had actually seen 10 pounds of gains. But you know, it was a better title to say say what I said. And so my problems, especially mentally, still aren't fixed. It was as recent as a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that I was eating a Bojangles biscuit, and all of a sudden the texture just threw me off and I actually almost went into panic. It was crazy. I was like, wow, I haven't actually gone into panic from a food in a long time, and I'm finally making this progress and it happens now. Like, it was frustrating and annoying, and I did ultimately kind of psych myself out there. It'll be a continuous attempt. There's no end in sight. People are curious what my goal weight is. I don't have one. It makes sense, I think, to have one. I don't know. If I had to guess, 125, 135. Maybe once I hit 125, 135, because I think I can now. Maybe I'll realize it's too much. Maybe I'll realize it's too little. So we'll see as we go. But ultimately, I've proven that I can do it, mostly because I have, for good, stayed over 100 pounds. That's why I'm obsessed with gaining weight. I'm trying to think of a way to summarize it. I guess it's that it's been something that I've never been happy with myself, and now the fact that I've proven that I can do it is the motivation to really dig in and see what I can do. So yeah. I was able to make this longer, more in-depth video thanks to Fume, so if it's any interest of you and you are looking for a better habit, I highly recommend you check them out. And again, if you use code GoHerping at tryfume, that's TRYFUM.com, you can get a free Fume base when you order the Journey Pack for a limited time. Hopefully you enjoyed. Feel free to ask me more about it. I can branch off into more videos with it, and I've been having fun with the whole process. So thank you for watching. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.